Hey guys, welcome to video 7. You've got 2 of these really intense hip videos left. Props today, you're gonna need a wall. You may need some blocks and you may need a pillow. I don't think that you'll need a strap for today. So just get yourself up against a wall, get those extra bits handy, and when you're ready, meet me on the mat. All right, guys, so all of the poses are gonna be on the floor today, and we're gonna start with half saddle. So it doesn't matter if you're facing or not facing the wall. What you're gonna do is straighten your legs. This is like that version that we did the other day with both legs behind us. You're gonna grab one leg, flick it behind you, and then this is where you may need to get those props. What is important is that your knee's not all the way out here. You want the knee to be in as much as you can towards your midline. So once you've got the foot here, let me start the time. So we are gonna be holding this for 5 minutes. So places where you might be feeling uncomfortable, that ankle definitely may feel too much. If you feel like you're rocking over away from that bent leg, you're gonna grab a block or a couple blocks. Chuck it underneath your butt, and that'll even you out. Okay, so if you struggled to get your bum down in that first saddle position, then you will probably need a block here. Now, my guys who are okay without blocks and your bum can come down and you feel really kind of centered, you can start to drop down, maybe all the way onto the forearms, maybe all the way down, again with that arm underneath you. If you don't have blocks, you can always chuck a pillow underneath your butt, and then we hang out. So depending on how the ankle feels, you may also need to prop something underneath that ankle. You will notice that a lot of these poses, you're gonna feel them in the ankles, and that just has to do with your ankle mobility, which is also going to limit or prevent your hip mobility. So once you're here, you're going to, if you're seated upright, you're gonna work on centering that weight between both of those sit bones. If you're down, you're just gonna try to relax into it. So once you're there, sort of wet noodle into this. You can just let your head drop. Shoulders and arms drop, either on the lap or the floor. Now that intensity that you feel in the ankle when you first come into it will hopefully lessen. Just remember, listen to those joints. They can feel uncomfortable, they can feel stressed, but we don't want them to feel like sharp and shooty pains. That's not ideal here. So time under passive tension, again, you guys should know this really well now. We're sort of aiming for a 5-minute mark. Some poses we hold for 3, but most we go to a 5-minute. We're at 2 minutes now. So time under passive tension, turning into this noodle. And then of course that 4-8 breathing pattern. So I'm not going to count the breath anymore for you guys. I really want you to start kind of feeling into it for yourself. Knowing that you inhale for 4 through the nose and then exhale for 8 out of the mouth. And if you're not quite comfortable going at sort of that length, do 3 and 7. So our nervous system really affects how we move. If we are stressed, if we are, existing in that sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight, our body is always going to be tensed. And I know I talk about tension a lot, but we can apply some tension and stress to the knees, okay? But we don't want to, be feeling that emotionally at a constant level. If you were to stay in this pose for maybe an hour or 2 hours, you'd probably really start to, maybe do some just immediate damage or some long-term effects to those joints. So we don't stay in this one place for a very long time. And, when we come out, we do a little wiggle, a little wobble to try to balance it out. You're not spending a lot of time in this position in your day. So, this small period of time is going to be okay, as long as you're listening to your body. But if you go in to do exercise and you're already, you know, like up here with how you feel, then it's going to be really hard to relax. And that's why often in a yoga class, you spend the first 5 minutes just kind of settling into your mat before you get going. So we're at 4 minutes now. So if you cannot hold this any longer, pop out of it. Otherwise, you're going to hang out here. Exhaling that breath out of the mouth. Remember, that's like if you were looking at a beautiful sunset, you'd take a breath out of the mouth. Vice versa, if you were crossing the road and a car almost hit you, what would you do? You go, and you take a big breath of air in. So those two simple, probably don't even think about it, things tell your brain lots of messages. We're scared, we need to get tight, we need to be ready to like attack or run. And it's okay, we can relax, everything's good. Nice, okay, so if you're down, I want you to slowly start to bring yourself up, moving props from underneath you, tip over to the left, and you're gonna grab your foot, and help it forwards. Point and flex the feet, roll the ankles, do whatever it is that you need to do. And then we're gonna go straight to the other side. So you're gonna tip over to the right, grab your left foot. If your knee goes really far out to the side, try to get it back to center. You can see how much I'm on an angle. So I can, if I work on it, probably start to center myself. Or I could take my pillow, chuck it under my bum, and that's gonna really even me out. So, you know, whatever works for you. If it's really intense and you're just like, mate, I'm hanging over here, then switch it up, okay? Then just take a block or something underneath you. It'll make it loads more easy. So once you're in that position, make sure you're centered. If you're coming down, make sure that you are centered between those two sit bones, then start to come down. You could just put your hands behind you. You can drop onto your forearms, or you can come all the way back with those hands over the head. Nice, so we're already a minute in. If that saddle pose with both of the legs behind you was really intense and you couldn't really cope with it, this variation is quite good. Half of the leg is slightly easier, less intense. Good. So if you're looking at your leg right now, can you figure out what that hip is doing? So both of those hips are in flexion. You're in deep flexion in the knee. And you're slightly laterally going out. But the bone is medially rotating in. So the knee might be going out to a slight side, but what that bone is actually doing is it's rotating inwards. And that's where that sort of weirdness comes in, because we don't do a lot of medial rotation. So we're at the 2 minute mark. See if you can wet noodle into this a little bit more. And it might be really hard if it's a really intense pose for you. The next pose that we're going to come into is quite intense as well. It will be humbling because I'm really bad at it. So this one is one of those ones where I talked in the earlier videos about Harriet and I doing classes together, and we both have tight hips, but some of the poses she finds much easier and some of them I find much easier. The next pose that we'll do after this one, I don't know. I don't know what it is about my hips, but they just can't come into it. That's okay. I've accepted it. When I look at Harriet's legs and they're doing it way better than me, I've let it go. So we're coming up on our 3rd minute. Took me a minute to count there. I didn't stop the clock, so it's just carrying on. So if you do need to come out, we've got 2 minutes left. That sensation, you're probably getting at the top of your big toe knuckle, if you're feeling it in your foot at all. And don't worry, that sensation that you're feeling a lot is probably just like compression pain or compression sensation. I don't want to say pain because you might not be in pain, but that is just your bone kind of pressing into the floor. Obviously, if it really hurts, chuck a blanket, chuck a pillow, double up your mat. You know, you can make this more comfortable. It doesn't have to be uncomfortable for you. We're at 4 minutes now. So if you cannot stay any longer and this is your get out of jail ticket, if you've stayed in, you're staying until that 5-minute mark. So keep working on centering that body. Breathing through it. Exhaling out of the mouth. Like you're looking into a beautiful sunset. "30 seconds left here, guys." Okay, so if you are down, slowly start bringing yourself up. Move those props, tip over to the right and release that left leg. Good. Let the legs have a little break. Get some motion back in those ankles. So like point and flex the ankles, roll the toes around, whatever you need to do here. And we're gonna come into our next pose. So I've saved this pretty close to the end, okay? This is the double pigeon, okay? It's a tough one for me. It might be a tough one for you. I am going to get my blocks ready, my pillow ready, and I'll show you what we're doing. So it's really important here that your bottom leg is parallel to your mat and the heel isn't coming in towards your bum, okay? So it's a bit of a weird one. It's like a straight line right in front of you. Then you are going to lift your bottom leg and you are going to place, you can see already how high I am, you're going to place your ankle on top of that knee. Now, this is my double pigeon, okay? Some people can get their legs to just plunk, totally come on top of each other. So actually, if you look at my arms, this is what we want. So that bottom leg comes down, the hand isn't coming in towards the pelvis. Imagine my neck is my pelvis, okay? My hand is like this, and then my other foot comes over. And some people can just get their legs to fold beautifully like this. Now, there's a couple of ways to modify this. If you are just like, I cannot even get my foot up here, it is way too intense, I want you to just simply straighten out your left leg and place your right foot on top. And this is where you're gonna hang out, okay? If you are a bit like me, where you can kind of get the foot there, but then you're sky high, there's a few ways to make this a bit easier. One, I like to place a block underneath my bottom knee. Okay, and that's gonna keep me from kind of flopping. You can see, maybe if I put a pillow here. There, okay. Now I'm supported. So maybe that's you. You can just like play around with things. Then we have got our arms and our body. So if you are someone like this, who can sit really comfortably, then you can start to lean forwards and come over those legs. But I want you to really, really make sure that those legs are completely on top of each other and your feet aren't coming in. So you're not sitting like this in a cross-legged position. So this is where the arms come in. If you are a bit like me and your legs are like so, you're wearing your knee or the right knee as a necklace or a chin strap, your hands are going to probably stay behind you and you're just going to gently, every once in a while, maybe try to send that weight forwards. If you're someone who can get that leg a little bit further, maybe the hands are at mid-range, and then if you're really flexible, you're coming forwards. Don't worry, it is sensation over destination here. So, you know, I say it all the time. Our bodies are very, very different. And if you think about the hip, okay, there are certain people who say that the hip is almost as unique as the fingerprint. So you've got the acetabulum, okay, that joint, that socket rather, that can vary in depth, in shape. There can be abnormalities or like little bumps and stuff in there. Then you've got the cartilage, okay, so the cartilage can differ in its thickness, in its size. Then you've got the bursa, that's kind of that lip that goes around the acetabulum. That can differ. Then you've got your femur bone. Now remember, I said there's a lesser trochanter and a greater trochanter. Those are the kind of bulges on the top of that bone. Well, they can differ in size and they have different planes, different bumps, different angles. Then you've got your ligaments, okay? They attach bone to bone. You got loads of them wrapping around. And then you've got your tendons. They attach muscle to bone. Then you got all those muscles. Remember, there's 17 plus muscles that wrap around that area. So there's so many different variables to affect the mobility of your hip. So just know that this is your unique hip structure. One day I want to be able to sit upright, okay? So instead of feeling like I have to lean back, be able to sit upright. I don't know if my legs will ever fully come on top of each other. It is, I mean, it's more than a block. It's probably 2 blocks height that my knee is away from the floor right now. That's all right. And this is one where it might feel a little bit funny in that knee. So just make sure that you're not sending so much pressure that you're giving yourself kind of those sharp shooting pains. We are not aiming to become contortionists here. This is a hip mobility class. If you're not mobile in the hips, then it's going to be really difficult. Guess what, guys? I've been yammering on and we're at 5 minutes. That's the good news. So I want you to lean back. You're going to uncross the legs and you're just going to windshield wipe here. Release some tension. And we're going straight to the other side. So this time, right leg. I mean, if you didn't do right leg, you can just do whatever the opposite is. So for me, it's my right leg is at the bottom. I'm then going to grab my left leg and place my left foot on top. Again, this is where you're going to see those discrepancies. So for me, I can probably cope with that knee in the sky, but it makes me feel a lot better with the block underneath my right knee. Okay, so again, if that is too intense, if it's not happening for you guys, straighten the bottom leg and take that top leg on top of the thigh. And then from here, you can start to lean forwards, okay, if you have that mobility within you. If you can get those legs directly on top of each other, I want you to really try to get your top, so your left for me, ankle further over. So you want to try to get the ankle bone on top of the knee versus the side of the foot, if that makes sense. So you're really, instead of here, you're trying to get it here, and that should make it a bit more intense for you if you want that intensity. So that right leg is parallel to the front of your mat, left leg is on top. We're already a minute in. Oh, where's my block? So I'm gonna place that under there. My hands are gonna come behind me. I'm not gonna get annoyed that my shin is super high. I'm just gonna hang out. I'm going to try to wet noodle into this. I'm going to let my head hang. I'm going to be as passive as I possibly can. And I'm going to come into that whiskey breath, that 4-8 breathing. As the time progresses, perhaps you can sit up a little bit higher. This is definitely my less tight side. You could tell the other side I was leaned really far back, and I can come a lot further forwards. The trend tends to be your more dominant side is your tighter side. Okay, so my left leg's up. I'm not left-handed, I'm right-handed. So it's a little bit, it will be weaker in terms of strength, but it's possible that it's going to be a little bit more flexible, because my right side is going to be the sort of more dominant side, so therefore the stronger side, but also because of that, perhaps the tighter side. Now that's not always the case, and sometimes it flip-flops between the two sides. And this is another one where the ankles can really chat to you. Okay, so don't be surprised if that happens. Again, you can try to negotiate. If it's really bothering you, you can try to flex the foot and flex, into that foot that should maybe make it a little bit less intense. But if you can, just keep it really wet noodle and really soft. And eventually see if you can just Allow everything to be really still. And you might not be feeling this in the legs. You might feel it in the lower back. You might feel it somewhere completely different. I tend to feel it in my top leg, but maybe you feel it in your bottom leg. These referral sensations, that just means that like somewhere else is kind of feeling it. And just remember that you've got this kinetic chain, this connective tissue. So just because you're doing something at your ankle doesn't mean that your pinky finger's not going to feel it. You got 1 minute left here. Hopefully you'll like the last pose where we're going to use the wall. Right, slowly, slowly, slowly start to bring yourself out of the pose. Woo-hoo-hoo. And then windshield wipe those knees. Okay, so for our last pose, you probably won't need any props. I've never used props with this before. You might need something if you've got a really bony tailbone. Perhaps you might need something there. I would suggest hugging yourself as close to the wall as you can. And then from here, you're just gonna whoop, send those legs up to the sky. If your butt's come away from the wall, you can try to shimmy yourself closer. It's not the most graceful of moves. So we are going to come into a wall squat. So we're using the wall again, and we're using gravity here. So you're going to start taking those feet wide, and you're going to drop the feet down. Now my knees are opening up into that lateral rotation. And that's kind of it. So walk the feet down, and you will, the further the feet go, the more intense you're going to feel this. Don't do it so much that your butt starts to lift, okay? You want to be able to keep that tailbone down. And then if you want to, you can take the arms over the head. If you want to, you can take your hands on the belly. So you want your toes going out on an angle, okay? So that they're going almost in the exact same direction as your knees. You can play around, okay? You probably don't want your feet at hip distance. You maybe want to heel toe the feet away from there. And we're going to stay here for 5 minutes. You can totally close your eyes if you want. Just letting the wall do the work. And you may find that as you hold this, the weight of the feet will, and as the hips release, they'll just kind of drop a little bit. Your hips will feel these moves we've done today, but at least the ankles are getting a break on this one. Those first two poses, they are quite intense on the ankle. You know, if you've got ankle mobility issues. I mean, I don't really think I have ankle mobility issues, but those two poses are quite intense on the tops of my ankles. Perhaps if you were like a dancer or a ballerina, you might be not feeling it. We're 2.5 minutes in. I love all wall poses. It's my favorite. My favorite is using the wall because you can kind of just really flop into it. That whole concept of wet noodle, like what are you going to do right now? You're sort of stuck. So just remember that all of this is supplemental. It's still really important to have a range of activities and exercises that you do. Strength is super duper important. Yes, we are doing mobility and flexibility, but we are strengthening those joints. Remember that idea of tension, or that idea of stress being a good thing to a point, okay? You don't want to be hanging out in this pose for, an hour and a half. You'll feel really, really weak after that. I'm super excited to hear how you're all doing after this course. Maybe you do it 2 or 3 times. but you should really start to see those mobility and flexibility gains because we're doing time under passive tension. And that's where that magic happens. That's where we really, really, really start to see the results coming to fruition. You got 1 minute left. Maybe see if you can get the feet a little bit further down. Maybe they don't want to. Stay with that breath. All right, take your hands onto those knees and start to bring them up. And you can just straighten your legs. That's a really nice counter pose. Stay here as long as you want. That's video 7 done. I'll see you for your next class. It's the last mobility work. Well done. I'm just gonna have a nap now. Bye.